Hey guys, it's Chandler, and welcome to the Healing Heroes.
I promise you.
I'm Chandler Stroud, an executive, wife, and busy mom of two, who after years of living with anxiety, health struggles, and an unshakable feeling like I should be happier, made a profound discovery that changed everything. Join me on a journey where unexpected paths lead to healing and more happiness. On this show, we'll explore unconventional ways to unlock more joy in your own life with the help of my very own healers and trusted advisors, the Healing Heroes. Hey everyone, I am so excited for today's episode because we are back here with Zach, who focuses on human design. If you missed the first episode, I highly recommend you go back and listen to my conversation with Zach because we discuss all things human design, what it is, and how it can help inform how you live your life. I am so excited for today's episode because we are back with Zach, and he is going to do a live reading for my kids to demonstrate how human design can help us as parents better connect and communicate with our kids, as well as support them as they grow. We talk a lot on this show about the various ways that we can get curious about ourselves to understand if and how we need to heal, and parenting our children is no exception. Not only is human design a tool you can use to better understand yourself and shift your perspective, as we discussed in my first episode with Zach, but today we're going to show how it can help you understand others on a deeper level and better connect with them as a result of having that knowledge. This episode is for you if you're a parent who has ever asked yourself questions like, what will my child be like as an adult? What will he or she be interested in? What will make my child happy? What types of things will he or she struggle with? How can I help him or her navigate those challenges today? But before we dive in, here's a quick refresher on Zach and his background for those that missed our first conversation together. Zach has been coaching and educating professionally for the last decade. The core and foundation of his work is human design, a modern science containing ancient systems for exploring the nature of being. He holds advanced academic degrees in pedagogy, literature, and French, as well as certifications from Gallup Inc. in Clifton Strengths Coaching and SSC in Human Design Coaching. In 2021, he obtained his Master Coach certification from Elementum Coaching Institute. And today he is back with us. And I am so excited for today's episode to go through all things human design. I think you guys are going to get a lot from Zach on how human design can be a tool for you, but most specifically in today's conversation, how it can aid you and support you in parenting your children on a much deeper level than maybe you've thought about in the past. So I'm really excited you're here, Zach. Thank you so much for joining us again.
I'm so excited to be here, Chandler. Thanks for having me back.
Zach, when I first met with you and you described human design, you actually had a demonstration that you gave me over the Zoom. And I know not everyone's listening on YouTube. So if you can kind of talk through it quickly as you do it, I think it would go a long way in bringing to life how human design works for those who are less familiar with it.
Yeah, when we talk about human design being a system made up of systems, the way that I've found to explore that is through looking at them one at a time. So we've got Western astrology, and that will give us a perspective of the stars. And there's so much information there. All by itself, it can be overwhelming. But we think of that as being threaded like on a bracelet. And so we've got Western astrology, and then we've got human biology.
And for those who are not watching on YouTube, each of these systems is named on an individual index card with a hole in it. And he's threading that bracelet or putting a straw, in this case, through the hole of all of these cards. So they are actually stacked on top of one another, connected through this straw.
Perfect. And so, yeah, the wisdom of astrology, the wisdom of human biology, the wisdom of contemporary physics, wisdom of modern psychology, numerology, genetics. That's a cool conversation. The Kabbalah, tree of life, the wisdom of the Hindu Brahmin chakra system and the wisdom of the I Ching, right? Instead of looking at these as one-offs and then having to compare them in our mind, human design creates a system that layers them all on top of each other and then looks for patterns, looks for things that are consistent throughout them all. And the blue straw represents human design. It's like the wisdom that unites all of these different systems. It finds all the places that overlaps, and it gives us in one stop a place to see it all at once. And again, I mentioned this on the first interview. There's a million things that we can learn about human design. There's all these little details and these rabbit holes we can run down. But the conversation today, and I really advise most conversations in the beginning, we can just focus on a few key pieces that deliver the biggest bang for the buck.
I love that. I'm excited to dive in so we can do that today. Before we jump into how human design can support us in parenting our children, can you quickly explain how human design can be so beneficial for individuals, just people in general who maybe aren't even parents? Why do people seek your advice and, want to know more about their human design chart?
Beautiful. I tend to work with people who they like to know the why of things, right? They may notice that they have a pattern that comes up in their life. If it's people pleasing, if it's perfectionism, if it's holding back, playing small. They might know that that pattern is there and that it's working kind of against them, but they feel like they can't really do anything with it until they understand the why of it. Where did it come from? How does it function in my body? How does it function emotionally, mentally, spiritually? And these things can be impossible to discover because it's like an eye can't look at itself, right? The eye can only see itself reflected in something else. And human design offers that reflection. It also offers a system that organizes different types of energy that we experience in our lives, from melancholy to delight. And it also helps systematize, it creates categories for the types of energy that we meet in other people, right? We might be someone who's go, go, go all the time. And we interact with a lot of people who are maybe more reflective and introspective, and their gifts aren't necessarily about what they do. It's the insights that they gain. It's the way that they guide. Some people are here to start things. Other people are here to build things. Some are here to lead. Some are here to guide. Some are here simply to offer a reflection. And human design, it creates clarity and actual camps where we can go in, we can see it, study these different types of energies, and then use that information in our real life. It's not just a nice to know, it's actually an experiment. It requires us to go out into the world and try these things out. And so anytime I'm in an interview or giving a reading, I say, you don't have to listen to me. Don't listen to me. Instead, hear what I'm saying and go out and try it for yourself. If it works for you, great. It's a system that will help you. If it doesn't, you haven't really lost anything. But this is definitely not a guru type of thing where people come to me and I tell them how to live their lives. Instead, I look at their chart and ask questions. Most readings, it's just me asking questions. And through having an opportunity to answer those questions, a lot of people find the clarity that they were looking for. If it's on a specific issue in their life, or if it's on a pattern, a theme in their life that they have just struggled to accept and understand.
Love that. Thank you for breaking that down so everyone has a better handle on it before we jump in.
Yeah.
And if you want to know more about the mechanics of it, I do highly recommend you go back and watch our season 1 discussion together. Me and Zach, we go into human design on a much deeper level, his background, how he got interested in it. And it really is a fascinating tool in our toolkit for how to be more curious about ourselves. And to your point, Zach, learn more about the why.
Yeah.
And now, switching gears a little bit, we are going to talk about how we can use that to our advantage as parents. And I'm so excited for this. I think, so everybody knows, I'm going to kind of turn it over to Zach and let him lead the conversation to some degree from here on out. I gave Zach the location, date, and time of when both my children were born, and he's pulled their charts for today's episode. So, for our conversation today, he is going to give me a live reading as a mom of a 9-year-old, almost to be 9-year-old boy, and a soon to be 7-year-old girl. And we are going to demonstrate how what I learn in this reading is going to help me navigate how to support them in their growth. How can I communicate with them more effectively? How can I connect with them better? And so that's what we're going to dive into today. I promise I won't bore you with details of both my children. That is not the intent. It's really to serve as an anchor. Their charts are meant to serve as an anchor for the conversations so we can keep coming back to something and demonstrating how there are tangible ways I can use this information and how I parent them, even just leaving the conversation today.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to dive in and learn more about the makeup of my son, Riley, and my daughter, Rory, and what their charts reveal that will help me parent them even more effectively than I hopefully already am today. So with that, maybe before we dive into the specifics of both my kids' charts, one general question parents might be asking themselves right now is, what is the benefit of knowing your child's chart in human design? How can it help parents raise their children more effectively?
Love that question. And again, human design is a practical tool. It's got a lot of information in it, but really the reason why it has value is that we can actually use it in our lives, in our relationships, in the decisions that we make. And number one for me, the reason why parents and children should be engaged in conversations and explorations of design is there's that quote where it says, "Everyone is smart in different ways. But if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it will live its entire life thinking that it's stupid." And to me, human design helps us know if we're raising a fish or a monkey or a raccoon or a cow or a horse, right? We don't have the same expectations of a fish as we do of a horse. And so there's a tendency, and human design offers an incredible lens to view cultural conditioning, family programs through. The tendency is to kind of unconsciously try to create mini-me's. And I know all the parents in my life have met with that energy of, where did this kid come from? Why are they this way? Why won't they listen to me? Why don't they have the same interests as me? There's like this alien quality that chirps up sometimes rarely, sometimes often. And human design offers a lens where we can say, okay, this is a fish. And so I'm not going to hold a fish to the standard of a horse. Or this is a horse, and I'm not going to hold my kid to the standard of a fish. And what that looks like is that there's these 5 core types in human design. Just like there's the different zodiac signs, Taurus, Capricorn, Aries. In human design, we have generators, and generators are here to build and to transform and to move their energy out of their body. We have manifestors. They're here to lead. They're here to blaze a trail. They're here to initiate, start new things. We have projectors. They're here to guide. They're here to listen. They're here to see with their X-ray vision into systems and find where things are functioning and malfunctioning. And they're here to transform systems. We have reflectors. They're really here to mirror back the state and the health of individuals and the collective. And then we have number 5, which is a hybrid type. It's a manifesting generator. And manifesting generators have a blend of generator, let's do it energy, and manifestor, let's lead energy. And Chandler, as you know, you have 2 manifesting generators under your care right now. And so with that as kind of a framework, human design helps us identify and work through these family programs that maybe we don't even know are there. It helps us identify conditions and conditioning, which is like an unspoken expectation that we may have of others or that we may have of ourselves. Some examples of conditioning and programming is the belief that your value is based on your productivity. I know a lot of people meet with that. Your value is based on not what you are, but what you do. Another condition or program is don't ask for more than the minimum. Don't use your voice. Never rock the boat. Avoid conflict at all costs. Respect and trust all authority figures and elders. Your value as a person is based on what you look like. That's another one of these things that runs in the background. Don't talk about your problems with others. Definitely don't be a burden. And then, belief systems around men should be this way and women should be that way. And so without ever stopping to take a look at like what programs are running our lives, we tend to just be on autopilot thinking that that's just the way that it is. And unless our inner self matches perfectly with those programs and conditions, which that's almost never the case, we're going to feel inner resistance. We're going to feel tension. We're going to feel like I'm not living my purpose, or I could be doing more, or why aren't I happy? I have everything a person could want. Why aren't I happy? And human design helps us go in and see truly what are the pieces at play, what are the variables that are getting in the way of that full expression of who we truly are. Not who our parents wanted us to be, not who our husband or partner wants us to be, but who are we truly at our core. Human design goes into the energetics of that and helps us see it. And just like a map, you have the piece of paper with the terrain on it, but then that's not the actual terrain. And so human design offers a map, it offers a blueprint, but then we have to actually go out and live that, right? We can see a map of a mountain, but it's not the same as climbing the mountain. And so
I love that.
Yeah.
Because we talk a lot about like all of the approaches on this show are not doing the healing for you.
Yes.
Right? They're empowering you to know what needs to heal so you can go do the work.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important distinction and clarification to make as we talk about, I loved the analogy you gave of the terrain. It's a map. It's a tool you can use for support and guidance and insight, but it's not like human design is going to go in and make these behavioral life changes for you.
Yes.
Right? And I think that's an important thing to just flag and highlight for the group here.
And I meet that with a lot of compassion too, because who wouldn't want the easy fix on a pattern that's been, making you miserable for decades? And human design is not an easy fix, but it can smooth out the journey. It can help us identify where things are worth our energy and where they're not worth our energy. And it can help us see and accept and love these parts of ourselves that maybe we didn't even know had names at all.
Yeah, that's very cool. Thank you for that, Zach. And I love all of the analogies you're providing to really bring this to life. The fish, the horse, the map, it's all very like, I get it. It really brings it to life for listeners who are less familiar with this art and science.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, the goal is to become more of ourself, right? There's another quote that I love, and it's that other people aren't failed versions of becoming you. And I think that is an unconscious expectation we might have of people, is that, they should be more like us. Meanwhile, we walk around thinking we should be more like someone else, and it ties us up in knots. And so
yes,
I
love that.
When it comes to human design, it's really helping our children become more of who they are. And that can take some work, right? That can take some trial and error, let's call it, because it can be scary to watch this being that we've raised, for decades, suddenly so different from us, so differentiated from us. Are they going to make the same decisions as we did? What if they get into this situation and they don't know how to get out of it. And so what we're also doing as parents and caregivers through human design is helping our kids develop a deep, deep, unbreakable trust in their own decision-making ability.
I love that. Yes, we are, Zach. Cosign. All right. Well, with that amazing intro, and now that we've told you a little bit more about how human design can help individuals, can help parents, the benefits of it, let's get into the reading. So, as I mentioned, Zach pulled charts for both my kids, and I have not seen them. We have not talked about it prior to this conversation today. Again, I'm not going to bore you with specifics about each kid. I'm going to try and make sure we're drawing correlations between what I'm learning and how I can take that and create tangible change in how I interact with them as a result of this information now coming to light. So with that, Zach, I'll hand it over to you to start however you want to dive in.
Awesome. And because so many of the listeners are going to be listening and not seeing, I'm going to try to tailor the reading in a non-visual way and talking about some of the concepts that maybe people could imagine in their minds, and to just set the stage for people who have never seen a human design chart. There is a pictograph, a visual representation that we call the body graph. And the body graph contains 9 shapes, which we call energy centers. And those energy centers function like chakras, if you're familiar with that. They're hubs of energy that are each tasked with a particular aspect of life. And so we have the head energy center, which is the center that takes in information, data, it takes in sensory observations, and it keeps track of those things. We've got the ajna, which is underneath the head, and that's where we form opinions and beliefs. It's where we kind of synthesize the information that comes in through the head into something that is tangible, makes sense to us. Underneath that, we have the throat. That's the center of communication, and it's really the center of manifestation, where we take what is inside of us, our thoughts, our beliefs, our feelings, and we externalize it. We manifest it into reality through our voice. Underneath that, we have the G, the identity center. That's where our sense of self exists. It's a continuous thread for some people, an unchanging self. For other people, it's a self that is constantly changing and dynamic. We've got the heart center, which is where the ego and the will live. We've got the solar plexus, which is the emotional awareness center. We've got the sacrum, which is the life force center. We've got the root, which is the center of adrenalized pressure, get up and go. And last but not least, we have the spleen, which is the center of body awareness. And if you can listen to how different each of those 9 centers is and conceptualize each one as like a little thinking brain, where the head center is handling information and mental activity, but it's not handling willpower, ego, or emotions, right? Because we've got the will center, the heart, to do that. We've got the solar plexus for emotions. And so we can begin to see the human energetic system as having these little hubs, these ports, that these different energy boats kind of sail between, carrying information from one to the next. And so first step is, if you are a parent or a caregiver, or you want to use this in a youngster's life and your relationship with them, the first thing to do is to get a copy of your own chart, which is free. You can get that from 10 plus websites. There's nothing to buy. If you're being asked to spend money to get your chart, know that you can get that for free in other places. mybodygraph.com is my favorite. There's apps where you can find the same information, but step 1 is just to learn the basics of your own chart. And by the basics, I mean, what is your type? Are you a manifester? Are you a projector? Are you a reflector? What is your strategy? And so each type has a specific strategy for how they make decisions. For a generator, it's to wait to respond. For a manifester, it's to initiate and to inform. For a projector, it's to await the invitation. And for a reflector, it's to wait a full lunar cycle, which is a whole other conversation.
Wow.
And then last but not least, it's the authority. And so these are the three parts: the type, your strategy, and authority. And authority is the specific energy center, which we just went over, the head, the heart, the spleen, that you are designed to make your final decisions from. It has the final authority. So Chandler, as you know, you have a solar plexus authority, which means that part of your decision-making process is going to be listening and keeping track of your emotions and an emotional wave. I have a sacral authority, which means that I am listening for a simple or which means that I need to break my big decisions down into binary yes, no. Instead of saying, what do I want to do, right? Using my human design, using my authority, I can say, do I want to do something outside? And I'll be like, Do I want to be around other people? So it's like, okay, I want to be outside, but not around other people. And so each of the different authorities has a slightly different way of making those decisions. And the thing to say is that it is knowable. It is something that we can find out what is the best way for me to make decisions. And a quick anecdote from my life is that as a coach, I spend a lot of time in these personal development spaces, and there's always this thread of like, listen to your feelings. What are you feeling? Get into your emotions. What is it trying to tell you? And my human design is kind of saying, like, you can do that, but you're really not going to get the clarity that you're looking for. Meanwhile, someone like you, the truth is going to be pay attention to what you're feeling. Pay attention to the intensity of your emotions. That's where all the wisdom is.
Very cool. That's very, very cool and helpful because, like, as we said earlier, when you and I met and I actually saw my chart on the screen, I was so focused on the spleen and all of these gateways hanging out in the spleen. That's like all I took away. Spleen. You make decisions with your spleen, which I know means like I really drop internally and listen to my body. And that brings a lot of wisdom for me. But it's a good refresher that the solar plexus was my source of authority. So
Yes.
Very helpful refresher for me going into the kids' readings. Thank you.
Yes. And I'm glad you bring that up, because what our design looks like and how it interacts is going to affect how our kids and the people who are depending on us respond energetically to us.
Very interesting.
And so step 2, if you're going to use this with your family, is then to know if you're a co-parent or if you have a partner, to just do the same for them. Learn their energy type, right? Are they a manifestor, projector? Know their strategy, know their authority. And I always tell people to take a season before looking at your kids and be sure that if you are co-parenting, to spend some time looking at, okay, how often are we on the same page? How often do we disagree? Where are there things in me that just make absolutely no sense to you, and vice versa? And see if there is a framework in your chart that will allow some of that to just be clear. And once it's clear, can we accept those differences about each other? You know, somebody likes to make decisions in the moment. Somebody else needs some time to think about it. Things like that.
Okay, that makes sense. For the purposes of today, guys, we are skipping that step because I have not done a reading for my husband yet, but don't tell anyone, Zach. That'll come later. So we are skipping step 2 for today, just for the purposes of this conversation. But do it the right way, guys.
And then the next step is really then the fun part. It's taking a look at your kids' chart or charts and learning the basics of what makes them at the energetic level. And again, there are books and podcasts and courses that will go in and explore every little detail of this stuff. And in the beginning, you don't actually need to know all of that. You can start with type, strategy, and authority and get what I've heard about 70% of what you really need to know. Maybe when it comes to parents, you can get 95% of what you need to know, because these are big pieces that can shift the dial like literally overnight.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
And so then the questions to ask, we're looking at our kids' chart for the first time. The first thing to notice is, are they an energy type or a non-energy type? And 70% of the world is an energy type, which means that they're either a generator or a manifesting generator. And all that means is that they have a defined sacral center. And the sacral center is like a little rechargeable battery inside the people who have it defined, where with the right amount of sleep, nutrition, and joy, they get to be like the Energizer Bunny. Just go to sleep, wake up recharged, ready to go. The other 30%, if your kid is a manifester or a projector or a reflector, they're considered non-energy types. And if you're rolling your eyes and saying, yeah, my kid's got plenty of energy, it's not as black and white as that. The non-energy types just have different ways that they need to replenish their life force energy. And they may be somebody who needs to take more breaks. They may be somebody who needs more time alone. And they may be somebody who prefers specific environments over other environments. And this is where it becomes tangible, right?
Yeah.
This is where we can start to see our kids where, they might be siblings, but they're so different. And one recharges their battery alone, and the other recharges their battery at the park, right, around a lot of other people. And it's explicit. You can see this at a glance by looking at your chart. And that's where, we can avoid trying to make a fish climb a tree, because
Totally.
a projector child, right, may have energy to play at the park for 15 minutes, and then they want to go and lay on a blanket underneath the tree and read a book. And if you're in a family where, again, there's a condition where it's like go, go, go all the time, busy is a badge of honor, that projector child who needs that rest, who needs that solitude, they might feel like there's something wrong with me because they aren't energetically designed that way. And so, again, first step, look at your chart, look at your partner's chart, look at your kids' chart, and notice, are they an energy type or a non-energy type? You can learn a lot just from that piece. And then next is to look at their strategy, right? Are they like a reflector? Do they need a full month to really process and sample and taste a big decision? Or are they like a manifesting generator? They need a split second to say, yes, that's for me, or no, that's not for me. And so big pieces that are available just at a glance, you wouldn't need to even hire someone to give a reading to learn that stuff from a chart. You can find it right there and start using it later that afternoon.
I love how you're talking about the broader themes across type, strategy, and authority, so that people have a sense of how to tap into or use those differences to their advantage, not even having their kids' chart. It's like, oh, I see how knowing my kids' type would help me approach them in that way, which I think is great. I mean, that's exactly what we're trying to do here.
Perfect. And one more kind of overarching thing before we look at Rory and Riley in specific is, when you get your kids' charts, you'll notice that some of the centers are colored in. We call that defined, and some of them are not colored in, and we call that undefined or open. And the defined centers in all of our charts, they function like speakers. For the conversation here, we can also look at the defined centers, our nature, right? It's the built-in parts of our personality. And the undefined centers are nurture. It's the places where we take in energy, amplify it. It's the things that we're here to learn. And so when people say, is it nature versus nurture? Human design offers both. There's parts of us that are built in, that's our defined centers, and there's parts of us that are that we're here to learn, that's our undefined centers, nature, nurture.
Thanks so much for that, Zach. That's really helpful. And I think it's a good foundational understanding for people as we dive into the charts now. So appreciate you breaking that down for everyone.
Absolutely. And turning our attention to actual charts, Chandler, you sent me over the birth information, time, date, and location for your son and your daughter. And that's how charts are generated. It's not by answering a bunch of questions. It's just based on birth data. And the science behind how that's possible is related to a subatomic particle called a neutrino, which you can Google that. It's a real thing, and it's been kind of the foundation of astrology. And now it's the scientific foundation of human design. And I pulled the charts for Rory and Riley and was delighted to see that they are both manifesting generators. And again, that's the type. It's one of the first things everyone learns about their chart is what their type is. And a few things about manifesting generators is that they are here to move and shake. They are here to build and to lead. They are here to really transform the world as we know it in ways that can be felt and seen. And again, it's just one big, broad umbrella because human design is the science of differentiation. It's really about breaking down these layers of nuance. And so where they're very similar is in their type, manifesting generators. And they both have the same authority, which is a sacral authority.
Wow.
Yeah, and so we've got manifesting generators with the sacral authority. And this is where my first question for you comes in, Chandler, is...
Oh, gosh. Okay, I'm ready.
When it comes to their energy level, how would you describe your kids?
I mean, nonstop. It's hard. I feel like so many parents say their kids have so much energy, but it is truly nonstop. From the second they wake up, it's like they even speak at high volumes in the morning because they're just excited. They have this energy of like, I'm awake. Let's get breakfast. Let's get going. Let's do the thing.
Yes.
Or even if they're sitting on the couch being lazy, I still feel there's an energy to that. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
And then they go straight through until the lights go out.
Yes. Yes. And I love hearing you say that because one of the things that we can learn about ourselves and our kids through human design is what's the best way for them to go to bed. And for manifesting generators, the best way to go to bed is with nothing left in the tank, right? As a generator, our job is to use up every drop of energy that we have. And unless we do that, we won't sleep as deeply as we could. And generators are 70% of the population, generators, manifesting generators. And so the bulk of people are supposed to use all their energy up in the day, which leaves the other 30% there conditioned by all of that generator energy thinking, maybe there's something wrong with me, right? Because they use up all their energy in the day and they wake up the next morning exhausted. And so again, there are tangible differences with your kiddos. Manifesting generators, they're going to go all day long, and they'll sleep best if they have used up all that energy in that day. And the battery recharges while they sleep, wake up, and do it again. And so very similar in that those two big parts, the type, manifesting generator, the authority, which is a sacral authority. And then the strategy for both of them is the same as well, which is to wait.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that unusual? They're like little twins. They're 2 years apart.
Yes. Well, and the human design works in waves. And so the next big wave is going to be a lot of projectors being born in the next 100 years. Right now, we're in a wave of generators, manifesting generators. Prior to that, it was a lot of manifestors. And so there's these windows where everyone who's born on that day is a manifesting generator.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it's not that unusual in the big picture. But again, looking at their charts, they start to become different, really different after that. So their strategy is to wait to respond.
Wait to respond. Okay. You wouldn't know that. I got to tell you. I don't get that as a mom. My son, yes, always. My daughter, not as much, but that's okay. I'm going to hear you out on this.
Well, and there's a nuance to it. And so manifesting generators are designed to make decisions in the moment. And that means, pros and cons lists aren't helpful. That means sitting and thinking about things is not generative. There's a tool to develop, which is listening to that sacral response. Is it an uh-huh or an uh-uh? And as a parent, one of the things you can do is to avoid asking these open-ended questions like we talked about earlier. Instead of saying, what do you want to do? You can say, do you want to go to the park? Do you want to go to the restaurant? Do you want to go to grandma and grandpa's? And when it's presented in a way that they can respond, right? Wait to respond. They will have an answer that they know. If you say, what do you want to do? They might go, because they have a multidimensional way of being. They might want to do everything all at once. And so waiting to respond, if you're a parent or an adult, and that's also your strategy, the best way that I've heard it described is think of it like a spider who's building a web. The spider doesn't go out and hunt for bugs one by one. It creates a situation, a web, where things will fly into that web, and then they can respond to those things, right? The web might catch a fly in it, and they go, yes, I'm going to respond to that. It might catch a little piece of lint in there, and the spider's like, no, I'm not going to respond to that. It might catch a leaf. It might catch a insect that they don't eat. And so waiting to respond, it doesn't mean waiting around twiddling our thumbs. It means having a clear sense of what the options are so that we can make that decision in the moment. And
Got it.
so
Okay.
boredom is a thing that I talk to parents of manifesting generators about. How do your kiddos handle boredom? How do they handle too many options? What happens when they get overstimulated? Just kind of as a bulk question, how would you reflect on having kids that are wired to be go, 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 and then when boredom sets in?
It's interesting. I struggle with boredom, and they do too. They hate being bored. They hate feeling like there's nothing for them to do. I thought that was just kind of the nature of children, is that they feel like they want to be entertained. And we as parents, especially these days, take that role on, I think, more than we need to. I remember as a kid when I was bored, my parents said, good, like go outside, because boredom is what created the creativity and the make believe play and those moments of discomfort we talk about where you really have to like go inward and be like, what do I want to do right now? No one is telling me what I need to be doing. What do I want to do?
Yes.
And I've always parented my kids in a way that I try to build some boredom into the day when I can, because I think it's good for kids to be bored because it teaches them more about themselves. And I fundamentally don't believe it's the job of a parent to entertain their kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. And using human design, you could build a strategy within them for how to navigate or negotiate with that boredom. Being, instead of the kids twiddling their thumbs and saying, what do I want to do? Breaking it into yes, no questions, into that binary. Do you want to go outside? Like, that's a yes, no question. No. Okay, so you want to be inside. Do you want to do something creative? Yes. Do you want to do something visually creative like painting? No. Do you want to do something that engages another sense like sound? Yes, play the piano. Like, instead of it being, because boredom is overwhelming for kids, not because there's nothing to do, but sometimes because there's too many things to do. And
Yeah.
so one of the ways of parenting a generator, a manifesting generator, is to help them chunk their world down into a yes-no binary, into these little categories of activity or of stimulation.
That's really helpful because what typically happens is I offer a litany of things they could go do. Use the toys in your room to build blocks, go outside and run out, ride your bike, or do something in the playroom, whatever it might be. But I rattle off 5 or 6 things that they could be doing with their time. But I
Yes.
think what you're saying is really helpful. It's not giving them option overload. It's actually helping guide them to a place where they are choosing the activity, but getting there a little bit faster because I'm helping their thought process along the way.
Yes. Yes. And it's building a life skill. And a funny example, because I'm a manifesting generator with the sacral authority, just like your kids. And if I'm going to end of the day, I've had a satisfying day, I want to watch something on Netflix. If I just open up Netflix, I'll spend 45 minutes scrolling because like everything kind of looks good or everything looks boring. My strategy now is I say, okay, what am I interested in watching? Action? No. Romance? No. Drama? Yes. And I narrow it down, and then drama, that's a show, drama, that's a movie, drama, that's a movie. And I whittle it down so then when I open up the Netflix app, and it's a funny example, but I already know drama, that's a movie, something in the last 10 years. And then I'm watching that movie. I'm not spending all this time scrolling. Another thing too with screens, social media, YouTube, for manifesting generators, generator types, is that it's like a drug. And I think it's a drug for all of us because of the way that those apps are created. But having access to all of those different options, that stimuli, right? It can be overwhelming, and it can be particularly addicting to somebody who's got a design that seeks novelty, somebody that's got a design that seeks like to have their brain lit up. And 70 or so % of the population is going to get kind of hijacked by that very easily. So again, as parents, helping build the life skill in our kids around how do they make decisions? How do they narrow the world down to a manageable size? And it's knowable in human design. We're talking about generators and manifesting generators here, but projectors and reflectors and manifestors have their own version of this as well. And so, yeah, Rory and Riley, both sacral manifesting generators. But then there's an element of the chart, it's called the profile. And that's where things start to look very, very different. And that's why you can have these big pieces between your daughter and son that are the same or similar, but they might present as very different. And oftentimes that's found in the profile. And the profile is a combination of 2 of the astrological elements in the chart. Riley is a 5-1, which means heretic investigator. Doesn't sound very fun. And Rory is a 2-5, which is the hermit heretic. And again, I think that the terminology could be updated to feel a little more empowering, but
just a little bit.
Yeah.
If I told her she was a hermit, well, first she'd be like, "Oh, what?" But that would maybe be a little bit uneasy for some.
Yes. But this is really where we start to see differentiation kick in full force, because with the heretic investigator, right, we could also call it the hero investigator. That's a substitution for heretic.
Well, that I can get behind, obviously. I
mean, yes. And the Riley, the 5-1, the hero investigator, emphasis on service, helping people, saving the day, exploring things at a ground level, like really wanting to know if there are options, what are the options? If there are rules, what are the rules? Just kind of an overview of what 5-1s tend to manifest. And then the hermit heretic, or the hermit hero in Rory, the 2-5, that's, again, the substitute word for hermit is the natural. In Rory, you might notice that she is a natural, right? Doesn't have to learn things in a linear way. Things might come very naturally to her, and at the same time wanting a place for that to go, wanting to be of service, wanting to help people, not necessarily networking, but instead think of it more of like a leadership, riding up on a horse, having a high view of things, being able to guide people. And so you start to see some differences there. And so then this again is for everybody. We talked earlier about, the defined centers and the undefined centers. The defined centers being nature, it's what we were kind of born with, and the undefined centers, nurture, it's the things we're here to learn. Both Rory and Riley have an open solar plexus and an open root center. And so the solar plexus is the center of emotional awareness, and the root center is the center of adrenalized pressure. It's that ability to track time, to kind of know pacing and when it's time to go. And my question for you would be, when it comes to transitioning between things, when it comes to an unexpected end to an activity, like it's time to go, how do your kiddos handle those sorts of experiences?
Again, I mean, I thought this could be attributed to any child, but they don't. It's the short answer. They really don't. I think my daughter Rory handles it better than Riley, but I have learned over time that I need to prepare him for the transition. Even if it's as simple as watching TV, I'll say 5 minutes left,
Yes.
3 minutes left, 1 minute left, just so that it's not a surprise when I come over and take the remote.
Yes.
And he does much better with that warning, I have found.
Yes.
Rory, I haven't seen it as much, though. In play dates specifically, if I just show up without warning, I mean, I'm searching for her in that house for a solid 30 to 40 minutes. She's hiding somewhere. She doesn't want to come home. It's actually gotten to the point of embarrassing. I'm like, I can't let you go anywhere because people want you out of their space and I can't find you or collect you. It's awful. It's really awful. But it's so her. It's so her. We're working through it, guys. We're working through it. Don't be afraid to have her over. She's great. I promise.
When what the charts would say about that is we'd look at the root center. And again, that's a space where when it's defined, people can pace themselves. When they get into high school, someone with a defined root center often can study, an hour a day leading up to the exam. They kind of can track time. They know how much time has passed by. When that root is open, what folks need is deadlines that are set externally. They need alarms that help them track the passage of time. They need warnings, as in, we're going to leave in 5 minutes. Those types of things, again, is where knowing your kid's design can be really helpful. Because, like I've heard you say, you think everybody's kid is that way. And 70% of kids are probably that way because it's a very generator quality. But again, human design seems to really be speaking to that 30% that aren't generators, where they're getting all this conditioning, all this programming, all this pressure to be like a generator, and it's not the way that they're wired.
Very interesting.
And so one other piece to explore in your charts is the G center. And in human design, the G is the identity center. And Riley, he has a defined G center, which means he's kind of here to have a good sense of self, a good sense of direction, generally feels worthy and lovable, right? When that center, it's the yellow square in the middle of the chart. When that's filled in, when that's colored, it means that there is a access to a predictable identity. And that's both in ourselves, we feel that connection. And then in other people, like there aren't a ton of surprises in terms of who that person is, how they're showing up. Rory, on the other hand, has an open G. And that simply means that she is designed to have an identity that shifts and changes over time. And it doesn't mean that she can't know who she is, but it does mean that she can probably get along with lots of different types of kids. In high school, the open G center people, they're friends with the jocks, they're friends with the stoners, they're friends with the goth kids, they're friends with the academics, right? There's this malleable, chameleon-like quality that as a culture, we demonize. We really do not support children with an open G because we want them to belong to one camp or one tribe or another. And the open G is here to really be able to get along with everybody. And so one of the ways, if you're looking at your kid's chart right now and they have that open G center, is they might need a little more affirmation. They might need a little more reassurance. They might need a little more validation. And for them, the environment and location is super important. The placement of the bed, the placement of the desk. They might want to sit in this chair at dinner versus that chair. They might go to a friend's house and just not like it there, and they don't know why. And again, it's because all this information is coming in like a microphone through that G center. And what we want to do is to encourage their routines. We encourage their creature comforts, finding ways to get them like physically comfortable. And I'm curious, when we're talking about the difference between Riley and Rory, what, if anything, is resonating?
I mean, I have to say all of it. My son is hilarious. He's like, see if this guy can beat me at math, or, like he's just like so confident at times and does seem to have a very good sense of self, I will say, a very strong sense of self, even at the ripe old age of almost 9. And I think that's reflects in how his social behaviors too. He picks a couple people he really trusts and likes and sticks with them. He is not the kind of guy that is trying to be, the mayor, right? Like that's just not how he's inclined. On the flip of that, my daughter has been called the mayor of her classrooms before because she comes in and just wants to be the center of attention and interacting with everybody, and does seem to kind of shift in terms of who her friends are and what she's interested in. And so I definitely see that starting to take root in their personalities.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's helpful to know the ways in which I can support Rory in making sure that, we are, if she's like doing homework on the bed instead of her desk,
Yes.
Maybe it's like, hey, should we move your desk here and move your bed over there? Like, if you are particular about a chair, don't be so annoyed by it. Be accepting of it and say, this is your chair at the dinner table going forward, whatever it may be. So helpful to know when to push back and when to maybe just say, okay, this is how it is, and that's okay.
Yes. And that's hitting the nail on the head, is that learning this stuff about the people in our lives can help us choose our battles, right?
Yeah.
Some will be worth it and others won't. And so one more nuts and bolts piece looking at Rory and Riley is that Riley has an open head and an open ajna center. Those are the two energy centers at the top. And open head will have a very unique learning style and a very unique sense of humor. Open ajna.
Truth. Oh, so true.
Open ajna, busy mind, easily distracted. Open-minded, asks great weird questions, often from kids. And so when we see that openness, it's like symbolic of like a very open mind. Rory has a defined head, defined ajna. So the defined head is more adaptable to traditional learning styles, like sitting in a desk, learning things by rote, memorization, facts, figures, taking instructions. And sometimes it's too early to tell, but we can figure out clues about our kids' learning styles based on their human design too. Me, for example, I've got a wide open head and ajna, and I would much rather figure out an ingenious way to cheat when I was in elementary school than actually sit and learn the material. Meanwhile, my sister, straight A student, like she would do, math workbooks for fun because it just made sense to her. And so just kind of as a concrete and abstract look at your kiddos, I'm curious, like final thoughts, final words on how useful this information seems like it could be, anything that's going to stick with you?
I mean, I think there's still so much to cover off on. I mean, you and I spent almost an hour just doing my chart, and we have both kids here. So I know there's still a lot more to unearth. But I think on the surface, in terms of what we were able to cover today, it really resonates in that I recognize there are a lot of similarities about my children. And I can see that day to day, but I also see the ways in which they are different. And I think learning more about what parts of those differences are innate to them is helpful in how to support and navigate those moments where there is some tension, friction, conflict, because oftentimes, I don't know, are you just being difficult to be difficult because you're tired and you just always want your way? Or is this truly coming from a place of, I feel strongly about this, and, this is just a part of why I am, how I am the way I am, to the example you used earlier, wanting a specific seat at the table or a specific color plate when they were younger, things like that, that now I look at them and I'm saying, come on, you're too old to be caring about that stuff. Like, get over it. But like, if Rory truly can't get over it because she has these built-in preferences, then like, maybe I let that stuff slide and don't, fight so hard. These are small examples. Obviously, in bigger ways, this can come to be like the room example. I mean, she's not getting a brand new bedroom because she wants something a certain way, but there might be middle of the road compromises or solutions to make her feel more at peace in that space, where, as before, I wouldn't have entertained that because I would have thought I just had a difficult 7-year-old on my hands. So like, I think that's a good way in which I can know more about, what they really need versus what they're demanding in their like young, immature selves. So that's just an example, but this is very cool. I will be excited to go deeper and learn even more, because I think they're at an age where my support in helping them become more of who they are is going to be not just great for them, but good for me and my husband as parents too. I mean, it's an impressionable age. There's a lot going on in their lives. They're growing so quickly. And so having this information can be a really valuable tool for us, I think, in connecting with them and making our kids feel seen. At the end of the day, I just want my kids to feel seen and heard by me, my husband, of course, teachers, friends, whoever. But like, at least at a minimum at home, I want them to feel seen and heard. And if this is a tool allows me to achieve that to a higher degree, then like, I'm all in. Count me in.
Yeah. I love how you put that, because it really is, the question that we ask is this who they truly are, or are they being difficult? Are they manipulating? Are they playing a game right now because they can read me or us as the caregivers? And yeah, human design can help us get at the nuances. Just one final thing. This is something that all parents, all people can use to really make this tool relevant. And each of the types has a particular emotion associated with like flow and an emotion associated with resistance. And so for generators and manifesting generators, what we want to look for and what we want to help our kids understand is the feeling of satisfaction, right? What does satisfaction feel like to them? What are the things that are satisfying to them? When a kid or an adult who's a generator is feeling satisfaction, it's like the keep doing what you're doing energy. And opposite to that is frustration. And so coming into a kind of conscious relationship and awareness of what the presence of satisfaction and frustration looks like in the generators in our lives. If you have a manifester, you'll want to look and track for the presence of peace and the presence of anger. What does it look like? Where does it come from? What conditions create peace and what conditions create anger? For projectors, it's success and bitterness, resentment. The bitterness also looks like a poor me, kind of victim energy. Like, why is this always happening to me? And then with reflectors, and reflectors are 1% of the population, but they're essential. Like, they're such interesting people. We're looking for surprise and disappointment. So what things light them up and what disappoints them. That is just kind of a cheat sheet for a way to go in, and you can kind of start looking for that now, having these conversations with your kiddos, instead of it being, why aren't they happy? Looking for things like satisfaction and surprise and peace and success as being the thing that is actually going to bring them into alignment.
I love that. That's very cool. A great way to end, and good takeaway for me and other parents who maybe have scrambled to print out their kids' charts as we were talking during this conversation. But I would say if anyone is curious about this, to Zach's point, you could get the charts for free online. You can also always reach out to Zach and do this for yourselves, for your children, your family. I've really enjoyed working with him, and he's super, super good at what he does, as you can see. So thank you for this today, Zach. This was such a treat, and it is not over. I still have so many questions, I feel like. So we're going to have to continue this conversation at a later date and time, so I can make sure I'm really catering to my 2 manifesting generators.
Yes. And it would be fun to do it for partnerships. And then anyone listening, if you want me to read your kid's chart, you can just sign up like a normal reading and put their birth information in the field. And I'm happy to talk about this anytime. There's no separate link or special way to do it, just the normal link on my website.
Cool. Thanks for that plug, Zach. I think hopefully you'll get a lot of interested parties, because this was great. I learned a lot. And to those tuning in, if you found today's conversation helpful, please share it with friends, and don't forget to follow the show. You can also visit healingheroespodcast.com to get resources, meet the heroes, and share your ideas for future episodes. Thanks for listening, everyone. And until next time, remember, be curious, be courageous, and be kind to yourself. You've got this.
Gonna make it